Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're coming back around again to some Wildcats. It's been a little while, like 2 months or something. We got caught up in the Extreme Studios carousel there. And today we're going to take a look at Jim Lee's reunion with Chris Claremont in Wildcats number 10. So just before we get into it, if you enjoyed the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, go and subscribe on my Patreon. Link is in the description. Gives you access to everything I do before it's on YouTube and helps the channel and helps to pay for new comics. So I believe that Wildcats is still pretty much monthly at this point. Jim Lee's been kind of pulling out all the stops to make sure he tries to stay on schedule. And he's got a whole ass studio helping him out now. We're going to get credits for ink assists in this one, although I do believe there's at least some pencil assists going on as well. And we're not too far off from Jim Lee doing the Liefeld thing of just, roughing in breakdowns and then just passing them off to his flunkies. I mean, at least Jim's got better flunkies. He's got guys like Ryan Benjamin and Brett Booth and Travis Schray. That's pretty good quality flunkies. And yep, as I said, this is the big reunion for Jim Lee and Chris Claremont. This is going to be all of 3 record scratch 4 issues because it's only been 2 years, but Jim Lee has completely forgotten how to pace a comic book. And I assume this is... I haven't read too much into this at all, like what's been going on around the time. I assume this is by way of a bit of an apology by Jim Lee for, getting Chris Claremont kicked off of the X-Men book and kind of unceremoniously ending his 26-year run that defined the characters and kind of made for the most popular comic book in the industry. What'll do for an apology on that, Chris? 3 issues? Make it 4. This, of course, is all unsubstantiated rumor that I've heard from, rumor sources. So let's take a look at the cover on this one. This is going to be the crossover between Jim Lee's Wildcats and Chris Claremont's Huntsman series, which is maybe something. He was going to do a crossover for that with Cyberforce as well, although I'm pretty sure that's like a year or something from now, isn't it? Oh, okay, no, never mind. This is the Cyberforce crossover is just later on this year. This is 1994. Okay, yeah, sure. Oh, this is the year of the Pact. These are truly halcyon days. And as far as a cover goes, that's not too bad. That's a lot better than the last one we saw. And anybody thinks I'm like needlessly attacking Jim Lee on that one? That was the last cover we saw. That thing's a hot fucking mess. This one at least is much cleaner. Far more clear what's going on. You get all these helpful lines going directly towards the focus here. And he's superimposed over the logo. That always helps to draw attention. And just in case you missed him, and you're not sure if you should buy this comic, there's a big old shot of Zealot's ass right there. Like, how could you not buy that, right? And maybe like a bit of an implication, like, why is she getting down on her knees? Okay. I'm sure it's just to fit her into the cover. That's all it's got to be, obviously. So, Wildcats number 10. This is going to be Gateway Part 1, story by Chris Claremont, pencils by Jim Lee, inks by Scott Williams, theoretically. Like I said, they do list the ink assists. This is J.D., Rich Johnson, and John Ty. I don't know those names. But Scott Williams has got to ink at least 3 comics this month, I'm pretty sure. Is Wetworks up and running yet? I don't think we're quite there, but pretty close. And we also get Soldier's Story backup in this one by nobody you've heard of in 1994. Although it's a very young Ryan Benjamin, who is quite a bit better these days. All right, so we're going to open things up with a big splash of Zealot. Because remember, I said from the beginning, Jim Lee's forgotten how to pace in this. Now, sure, we've seen a lot of splashes for like a lot of Image, but even Marvel, Just this one is here specifically to be sold, it feels like. The point of this opening sequence is that Zealot is training Voodoo, which is something that we kind of got teased for a while there. Or did it? I don't know. I know later on, Voodoo has been trained by Zealot, so I guess that has to be established sometime. And it's a nice enough shot, for a big old splash, gigantic swollen moon. I like the cityscape in the background here. Looks nice with the whiteout over it. Also looks a little rushed, but that's okay. And the figure here is pretty good, although the proportions seem a little strange. I mean, you want to talk about head height. What's the proportions on a superhero woman's body? Like 7? 6? I wouldn't think it would be that different for... Yeah, like 7, I would think. Super long legs, that sort of thing. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... Uh-oh, running out of room. 7, 8, 9-ish? Like, she stands up straight. She's going to look like the Rob Liefeld Enchantress. That is always a danger of the full-page splash, of course, is that you just kind of lose sight of things like proportions. It's always weird when you see that kind of thing from Jim Lee, because he usually has everything locked down. But at this time, Jim Lee he's rushing too much. He's got his attention split too much, I think, trying too hard to be a publisher and, trying to find new talent, trying to get all sorts of things up and running. He's trying to get the Wildcats cartoon going. He's trying to start new books. If he gets the length of the legs wrong, I guess that's a sacrifice that's going to happen. Of course, all of this kind of overlooks the fact that Jim Lee is not, a skilled businessman. He makes a lot of money, but that's all based off of him being a good comic book artist. So yeah, they're discussing the necessity for Voodoo to learn some training or, learn fucking something, because it's basically been 12 issues and she doesn't know anything about how to fight or how to use her powers or anything just yet. Anytime a fight starts, they always just kind of chuck her out the door and go, let's see if you can do anything. And she's kind of arguing whether or not she even really needs to do this, because Spartan's been showing her some things, apparently. Yeah, I bet he has. And, she's kind of picking up how to do the fighty stuff. And Zealot kind of flexes around and does her, kata stances. Being but I'm so good at swords, though. And Jim Lee drew a reaction panel, so she's got to keep talking, I guess. So she flexes again and goes, I'm still so good at the swords, though. And another reaction panel. And Zealot kind of swings to make sure she's paying attention. It kind of looks like she's maybe attacking her for a second. If this was a page 3 and we were to flip over and go, what the fuck? But it's right there. Nope, she didn't do that. And she gets all pissy, so Zealot knocks her back down and then talks a lot, because this is a Chris Claremont book. And the artwork here is a little patchy. I'm guessing it's down to these extra inkers. This is not, there's no way this is Scott Williams. This is way too thick. And a little rubbery. If anything, it looks a little bit like what J. Scott Campbell was doing on Gen 13, so I would suspect somebody like Alex Garner, but he wasn't listed. These heads aren't quite right for Jim Lee. There's a bit of inconsistency here. This is not as good as Jim Lee can do. It's not really that close. This shot's nice. This one, whatever. If you're into that. We're all into that. And then, just as Zealot is straddling Voodoo, and we all go, oh, damn, a big old fucking tanker ship or something just teleports in out of nowhere. That's a pretty fucking cool shot. Not as cool as these ones, though. This perspective's pretty fucking wonky, but it works with just, I don't know, you're the size is all fucked up and everything. And there's some neat directional stuff going on here with, the shape of the panels. And some, so the thing touches down, just kind of crashes into this, butte here, I guess. And there's a guy up on the bridge. And then we get the beam that follows him, blasts him in the back here. But it also directs your eye. And then you get the motion here as he falls forward. And then the panel down here, that's, I don't usually even notice directional devices. That's pretty good, though. Yeah, this whole spread here is actually quite good and doesn't look like Jim Lee. You know what it looks like? It looks like Whilce Portacio. I mean, for one thing, with the shot of the ship from the low force perspective angle, and then just stuff like this with the weirdly shaped panels with a lot of white space. And the panel kind of adheres to the action and actually kind of flows really well. That's a Whilce thing. That's not really a Jim thing. If it is Jim, I mean, good on him for picking up some Whilce stuff. It's always a good idea. But I mean, this splash is great. This is probably the best thing in the issue. And then we get back to some regular kind of boring Jim stuff. Just heads and dude leaping and shooting. And it's okay, I'm being kind of mean there, but you think about how Whilce would have done this, a little bit different. Think about somebody like Nick Manabat. Very different, right? These guys are supposed to be impressive artists, and Jim Lee is giving us stock, which is what, it's what Jim Lee does. Nobody should be surprised. So then Zealot leaps into action. Isn't this a Psylocke shot? Okay, not quite. Close enough that, this is X-Men number 7, by the way. Close enough that if it were anybody else, I would accuse them of swiping. But as it is Jim Lee, this is just what Jim Lee do, where he finds the pose that works, and he does that pose forever and ever. I mean, it does work. It's a great pose. So yeah, leaps in and cuts the hand off, and also cuts the head off. And then she's going to step inside the ship to see if there's any survivors, or if there's more threats or whatever. Not a particularly impressive tiny silhouette. I mean, which isn't weird in itself, except that Jim Lee's usually pretty good at that. we're in this weird spot now where Jim Lee just can't win with me. You know, when I was a kid, I thought Jim Lee was the best artist that had ever lived. Or, you know, like, close enough, right? Then you get older and you realize that, you know, it's really only centered around this little group of issues from 274 to 277. And then you realize that he had a bunch of help with that. And it's like, well, shit then. Nothing he does is anywhere near as good as I thought it was. So now I'm just looking for every excuse to pick apart everything he does. And holding him to that original standard, knowing that he can't possibly reach it. Unless he gets Wils's help, and then I'm going to call him out for getting Wils's help. Hi, my name is Mitch, and I'm a hypocrite. Now you go. So while Zealot goes inside, the dude who was shot off the bow of the ship gets off and runs away. And then the body of the not quite a Daemonite starts spreading all sorts of tendrils that start sort of grabbing on to Voodoo here. And yeah, just start covering her entirely in, well, I mean, that's not exactly the most flattering shot. I could see that being misused a little bit. I don't think it ever has been, though. So let's just move on. So on board the ship, Zealot is searching out survivors and stuff. Again, this looks like it evokes stuff from X-Men #1, with like Wolverine and I think it was probably Rogue who were searching through the nuclear submarine. Or earlier when they're doing the training sequence and they're in the sewers underneath the X-Mansion. Again, just kind of standard stuff. Imagine if he did that from like, you know, a bird's eye view or something. Wouldn't that be weird? It would be weird because Jim Lee wouldn't do that, at least not in this situation. So, Zealot finds one survivor here, but as she finds her, she gets jumped by these Rakshas and stabs backwards at him, which knocks them both through the wall here, I suppose. Awful lot of panels going on here. Maybe if you hadn't wasted a whole bunch of space earlier on, you would have been able to stretch that out a bit more. And yeah, so they land at the bottom here, and Zealot is engulfed by Rakshas because they are Legion. Who's doing the lettering on this? Tom Orzechowski. Okay, so that's probably legit lettering. It looks computery. But then Huntsman comes by and checks on the girl who was unconscious, picks up Zealot's fallen sword. Oh, I guess it did show that she dropped it right over here if you really look for it. And leaps into the fray to go rescue her. I like all the background stuff going on here. That's pretty good. And again, this page on the whole, I got no problems with. Like, this is kind of standard stuff. There's something sterile about this shot of the Huntsman is all. I don't know if it's the ink assists. It might be the ink assists. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, the two of them are chopping away at these Rakshas. Chris Claremont has to write something. So I'm sure he does. These shots are reasonably cool. I mean, this actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Art Adams. Looking at it, it might be the really tight cross-hatching going on here. It's a weird separation here. Because, like, that's a crowd of Rakshas. We've got a couple in the foreground here. And a couple in the middle ground who are exactly the same size, if not larger. And they're separated, yeah, by this cross-hatching. And then another row in the far background, which again seem to be about the same size, and are again separated by cross-hatching. That is strange. Like, you know what he's trying to do, I just don't think it worked. This shot here looks a bit better. Although, again, this shot of Zealot, I'm sure he's done as Psylocke some point. I don't know, as we get further and further into Jim Lee's image career, it feels like he's just pulling morgue files for everything, and by morgue files, I mean comics he's drawn before. Like, those are his references. I'm going to close up of the Huntsman here. Again, that does not look like Scott Williams. I don't know who that is. Again, reminds me a bit of Alex Garner. It's weird, it doesn't quite look like Jim Lee. Shot at the bottom here, it's fine for like a kind of cooling the blood pressure kind of panel. Then Zealot turns back to Huntsman. He returns the sword he borrowed from her. Is that how you do that with the pinky? No, you do it with the. Did you do it with the index? I don't know. That seems wrong. I'm gonna bitch about how he flips the sword now. And then Huntsman picks up whoever this is, Ty. It's Ty. Everybody say hi to Ty. And brings her out. Again, I don't know who the fuck is inking this. That sure as shit ain't Scott Williams, though. Should have been Scott Williams. So then they go down to the beach. Those were the only survivors. And Voodoo is nowhere to be seen. So Huntsman is pretty sure that she's probably been possessed. Zealot gets all like, I didn't ask for your help anyway, asshole. And he kind of, sweeps her aside. And then starts bandaging her wounds to show that he's a good guy. This stuff here, I think, might be Williams. This is pretty clean. This stuff, maybe not. But anyway, it looks like Voodoo, possessed by the Raksha, is in pursuit of the dude who got shot in the back earlier in the comic. So they're going to go pursue her and him on the bike that Zealot rode in here. Kind of a nothing page. You know, a lot of dialogue for not much going on, but then that seems about correct. And then a shot here of the police boarding the, the police show up here while they're still wrapping up Zealot, and they just kind of take off before they drive up here, I guess. Sure. And the police never notice them. And then we keep following the police as they go into the ship to check on, any survivors, and there aren't. There's just a big old pile of bodies at the bottom by the looks of it. I don't know if that's going to come back. It doesn't seem like it would. It's kind of a cool shot. I mean, it's similar to what he did on Deathblow. Kind of. Far less intense, but this is all I'm going to do. This is apparently how these videos go now, where I just look for what Jim Lee comic Jim Lee's referencing. So, the dude who jumped off the deck here, what's that guy's name anyway? I'm pretty sure he got named at some point. Okay, his name is Wu. And Wu is trying to get a hold of Emp. And Emp isn't answering, which pisses Wu off, so he's got to do some destruction of public property. And again, this inking's weird. I don't like this. This looks like something Scott Clark would do, almost. And anyway, we cut to 3 people hanging out on a boardwalk. So like a throuple, one of those thruples. And they happen across an old lady in spandex. And they're horrified, as they should be. And one of them, it turns out, is a paramedic, so he goes to check on her immediately. And she kind of grabs him for a smooch, which again grosses him out, as it should. Only, she turns pretty right at the last second, so it all worked out okay for you, bud. But turning her pretty cost him, his skin, because his skin just, disintegrated there. It's probably worth it. Other guy here rushes in for some reason. I don't know what the fuck he thinks he's gonna do. He's like, she's melting him. She must be one of them mutants. So I'm gonna fucking tackle her? Okay, I'm sure that's gonna work out well. And then, yeah, she just, I don't know what the fuck she did to him. Backhands him, and he does a fucking Mariposa. And yeah, so that's him dead, and it looks like his spine's completely cracked there. So then she goes and tentacle porns the survivor here. Yeah, sucks her in closer. Again, I don't know who's inking this mess. Is that Brett Booth? Might be Brett Booth. It's not the best. It's not terrible either. I mean, if this was anybody else but Jim Lee, I'd be like, hey, not bad. But it's Jim Lee, so I'm like, do better. And yeah, so now Voodoo is totally rejuiced. I guess for the moment. I mean, that didn't take long for her to turn into a full-on octogenarian. Who knows how long this is going to last. But yeah, she goes leaping off into the night. After Wu here. After me? No, after Wu. So Wu gets on the subway. He does get on without getting attacked, but when he's on the subway, then he gets attacked. We get this kind of nice shot of a silhouetted Voodoo hanging on to the outside of the car and just being all fucking Twilight Zone and terrifying. That's good shit. That's cinematic. And then she busts in on him and he immediately boots her. And in case you weren't sure, boot. You imagine if this was a movie and that, this sequence happened and this fucking terrifying wraith busted in and then you heard this as a sound effect? Just boot. And she goes flying out of the subway. So I guess he won that one. Good job. I mean, if he doesn't boot her out immediately, I imagine she rips him to pieces. So it did have to be pretty quick. So the Raksha that's riding Voodoo, okay, so she's lost a hold of Wu for the moment, but she's able to access Voodoo's memories and knows that she has a whole bunch of buddies that she can use to help track down this guy. So calls up the Wildcats and gets Void to teleport her in. There's that Simonson-y metal treatment. I don't mind it too much. It's just not a Jim Lee thing. And Voodoo tells them that Zealot has been captured by the Rakshas, so they have to go find her and free her and stuff. Decent enough shot. And then at a Halo development site. That's interesting. I wonder if that... I hope that they come back on that, because that would be a useful reason to own your own company, is so that you can have weird places like this to meet. Or to have fights or whatever. Or to hide things. And yeah, they just kind of fence for a second here. Not too long. But we just find out that Wu is calling in a marker that Emp owes him. And at that point, the Wildcats teleport in. Wu complains that you said this was going to be private. And then Emp is like, what the fuck are you guys doing fucking up my meeting? And Spartan's like, you're being set up, sir. It's a trap. And then they turn around quickly because those guys from the miniseries, kind of, were like, oh, but it is you who are the trapped now. And that's kind of how we're going to leave things off. I guess that's a cliffhanger-ish kind of thing. We get cool shots of the Wildcats and Attica and his buddies here anyway. That's like a cliffhanger, right? And 23 pages. I mean, that's not bad. For a book with a backup, you'd think it'd be like 17 or something. So you got your 20 plus pages of, quote, Jim Lee, unquote, artwork. So anything now is bonus, right? Or, at the very least neutral. And neutral's what we're going to get. We're going to get the backstory for some guy in Korea, and his name is Soldier. And Soldier doesn't cotton to cowardly captains. Is he a captain or a lieutenant? No, he's a lieutenant. Fuck, I had the alliteration going there and everything. And he likes to charge in single-handedly and blow shit up with an improbable bazooka for the 50s. And yeah, he's going to shoot everybody. He's going to get shot himself once in the leg here. And he's going to shoot a bunch of guys himself. Nothing's going to be gory, though, because this is Image Comics. And though we could do that, we won't because it might hurt our profit margin. And yeah, he just kind of tears through everybody. And then he's going to place a grenade at the top of the mountain here to try and start an avalanche on them, I guess. That kind of thing. He was going to run away, but he got shot up a little bit too much. So it looks like he gets to sit there for the explosion. So that's something. That's like a one-up on Liefeld characters. If it was a Liefeld character, he would have just got to the top of the mountain and he would have kicked a boulder down the mountain. And then he would have gone, Rome body slide by 5. And then they all would have teleported out of there. So yeah, he's planning on dying at the top of the hill, but he gets saved by a really sluttily dressed angel. Like, seriously, can you imagine the Wildcats movie if they had ever made that? And having to have somebody run around in this? Like, holy shit, dude. And anyway, he wakes up later in a hospital, and the person that he was telling his story to, he didn't notice this whole time it was the same person that rescued him, so he must be on some pretty good fucking meds. And that's the end of Soldier's story. And this is all drawn by Ryan Benjamin. Back when Ryan Benjamin was still pretty young, I imagine. It's okay. It's a thing, right? Like, it's flunky work, but homage flunky work is far more impressive. Oh, there's Chris Claremont's novels. We don't want them. Nobody ever bought a novel based off of the ad on the back of Wildcats number 10. It sounded like I was reading off the lyrics to fucking Cotton Eye Joe or something for a second there. But yeah, like I was saying, the guys who aren't quite up to snuff in homage studios, at least, are so much closer to professional quality than the guys in Extreme. Like, can you imagine in those Bloodstrike issues that were in the Extreme Prejudice crossover, if Rob Liefeld had been like, hey man, can I rent Scott Clark for a couple of issues from you? Those things almost would have been the star of that series, except for that fucking petty issue. So anyway, yeah, that is it for Wildcats number 10. It's a setup issue. Not a whole lot of fantastic visuals. There were a couple of good pages, though. There was that one splash that was pretty great. Yeah, I got no problems with that whatsoever. There's some alright stuff in there. Overall, though, I mean, just kind of bleh. I remember this storyline. This was the last storyline that I read of Wildcats. I read it all the way through, at least. And then went, yep, I'm done. Not realizing Jim was too. This is the last storyline Jim Lee's going to do for Wildcats, at least on a regular basis. So yeah, next time we'll get to see some more, Jim Lee at 75% artwork. Only next time it'll be on guys in, patent leather and shit. So that's far better. So yeah, that'll do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification so you know when the next one's coming out. Go over and subscribe on my Patreon. That'll give you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions, and you can go and join the Blood Force Discord server. I'm a little pleased at how long I was able to go on this. This is one of those ones I read, and I was like, man, I'm going to run out of shit to talk about after 15 minutes. And I don't think so. I think this is probably closer to 27. Will that hold up for the next Wildcats issue? I mean, I guess it must. I've been doing these videos for a year and a half, and somehow I can still talk about some random issue of fucking whatever 90s Image comic for like half an hour, so I don't think I'm stopping anytime soon. So yeah, that'll do it. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.